The following program is rated PG-13. Parental supervision is advised.
All right. Let me get my clothes on here and put my pants on. All right. Nobody's naked, right? All right.
Poseidon, the ruler of the seas and all that dwell within them. His rule over the oceans is unquestioned. There are those who serve him with tridents and with infinite knowledge of all things submarine. They are known by many names: coners, weaponeers, the merry men of Sherwood Forest. But by Poseidon himself, they are called the Subvets.
Stand battle stations missile for WSRT. Spin up all missiles.
More than 100 warships. Does the Pentagon have any indications that perhaps a submarine may be trying to defect?
No, we do not, Jeff.
That's the craziest notion I've ever heard. A serving line officer, an entire ballistic missile submarine? Hell, they can't all want to defect. Even if it's only the officers, I find it extremely difficult to believe.
What's his plan?
His plan?
Russians don't take a dump, son, without a plan.
Have you ever seen a submarine movie?
Oh my God. Operation Petticoat, Das Boot, The Enemy Below, Run Silent, Run Deep, Gray Lady Down.
Oh, Yellow Submarine?
Yellow Submarine, yes. Well, there's so many submarine movies.
Sect Edition 1 SQ for strategic launch. The release of nuclear weapons has been authorized.
Already? Man.
It seems like we're really close.
So
it seems like it's de-escalating already. So, you do actual news and you like to verify your news sources. Where me, I like to go on the rumor pages and get all freaked out. So I was thinking, hey, I don't have to shovel snow today because, the nukes are just going to take care of it for me. No problem. Just melts it all, right? I had my iodine bottles out already. It's going to drink it. I was good to go, Dave.
Was it
Bring it on.
Is it red wine that absorbs strontium? I don't remember. So the old Soviet sailors, they used to drink red wine on patrol because it absorbed the strontium or something. And
well, I don't know if that has the same iodine effect for radiation. I mean, because they had problems with their nuclear reactors,
right?
For a long time. The radiation sickness was pretty common for the first couple series, anyways.
Well, So of course, what Eric is making sly reference to is the fact that at any moment now, World War III or something lesser could kick off over Ukraine. And we of course talked about this a little bit last week, and I've been concentrating. I didn't do a lot of shows this week. It was weird, but it's something I've been thinking a lot about, spending a lot of time thinking about this July 1914 thinking in the month run up to World War I, how the world was just sort of oblivious to things, and yet they weren't. There were things that were more important, and people were more concerned with getting their vacations in and their Tour de France and everything else before they started paying attention to the fact that Austria-Hungary was about to kick off the most insane war ever fought.
Isn't it ironic, though? What you're describing is sort of kind of like now. People are kind of oblivious. But the question is, Dave, was there all kinds of political corruption, craziness going on both sides of the war that we're getting ready, or participants that maybe they were trying to cover up?
When you talk about political corruption, you're going to have to be a lot more specific, because corruption is something that, keep in mind that there are people that believed then, as now, that World War I was contrived to kill off socialist worker rebellions. In fact, the worldwide leader of the socialist workers movement, who was urging the workers of Germany, Russia, Austria-Hungary, France, England to not fight in the war, to refuse to fight in it. That guy was assassinated less than a week before the war kicked off.
No kidding.
No kidding. So when you talk about political corruption,
what's a big thing? I mean, I'm not trying to point out a specific party. I should say, how about government corruption at all levels, from the local all the way up to?
Well, keep in mind you had
federal.
different kinds of governments. In fact, the only democracy you had actually involved in World War I was France. The rest of them were monarchs. Now, they may have been constitutional monarchies, but they were like England, or hereditary monarchies like you had in Germany and Russia and Austria-Hungary. But they were essentially monarchies. So France was really the only democracy involved with this. And France was embroiled in this, much like today, with this socialist movement that was trying to take over things and it was running into resistance from the old conservative guard. And
there's a lot of resistance in France. I've actually been pretty proud of them standing up to their government. Seems like every time they pass something, people are down there letting them know how they feel about it.
Yeah. It's oddly prescient of what's happening today. And it causes me, as a historian, it causes me a lot of concern. As a former sailor, and I say former sailor because you never really quit being a sailor, do we?
No,
I think we do.
It
causes me a great concern because I know a great number of sailors that are still in. And I was thinking about this morning. I was actually talking to one of them this morning, and I was in 1991, and maybe you remember this, maybe you don't, I don't know. In 1991, we were doing the workup, late 1990, early 91, we were doing the workup for Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Right. And I remember in that time frame not being scared or worried about anything. Now, maybe there was no reason to be, maybe there was, I don't know, but it didn't bother me at all. And I was thinking this morning that if I was still in the service today, if I was still in the Navy today, it wouldn't bother me because I would know what my job was. I would know how I'm trained. I would know what I'm going to do, taking a sailor's chance. But now we're talking about people that I talked into joining the Navy. And I feel a little bit of responsibility in the sense that these people very well may be going to war here really soon. And it's not my fault, but I feel a sense of responsibility and accountability for it.
I think we feel a sense of responsibility for everybody. It's in the military. I mean, because we want to know our leaders are making the right decisions. Are we getting into things for the right reasons? Because in this one, Dave, it's not like this war we've been in for the last 20 years, 5,000-6,000 people. I mean, we're talking thousands of people.
Yeah. I don't know. I know
it's a lot to think. It's a lot to think about.
I follow the news pretty closely on this, and of course, the most surprising news to me today has been, and this actually came out last night. As we record this, it's Saturday, the 22nd, the morning of. The most surprising news to me that came out last night was the United States is sending back a reply to the Russian demands. Right, the Russians sent us a whole bunch of demands. You will meet these demands or else. And They demanded a response from us. And so we've written a response to them. It's in writing. It will be delivered, I believe, by Wednesday. And for some reason, we have publicized the fact that we have made a special request that they not publish our response. So here's our secret note back to you. Please please don't talk about this. Please don't print it in your papers. Please don't talk about it. Please don't read it out loud. Which is bizarre to me. I don't know.
Could it say, we were kidding, please don't blow us up?
It might just say that. It might just say in there. I mean, didn't the president the other day say, well, if it's just a minor incursion, we'll be okay with it, more or less? Not exact words, but isn't the fact that we're asking them not to publish what we replied, which should be something along the lines of General McCullough's famous note at the Battle of Bastion and the Battle of the Bulge, right? When the Germans said surrender, he sent back a note that said nuts. I mean,
yes, I remember that.
It should be along those lines of no. But somehow or another, I got a feeling that this is, we're trying to
Well, there was unofficial like Twitter thing where the Russian families were the reserves that were called up saying that their soldiers would be gone anywhere from 3 to 9 months, I think it said.
Yeah, it's going to be longer than that. Everybody always thinks these things are going to be short, and they never are.
Mm-hmm.
They never are. That's
it's just but I was on patrol for that Persian Gulf War, and I remember. So we talk about the WSRTs and stuff, but those started ramping up interestingly. And yes, you're trained, and we would have done it.
Yep.
I mean, we're talking because you were trained on a weapon system that was. I always looked at. We were part of the triad. We were the cleanup crew. Yeah. You had your bombers and the missiles go in, and then we got anything else. But we would have done it, and I know there was I don't know if it was worry, but you felt like something could go down. You had a lot of there was some concern, but you're gonna follow orders because that's what when you're young and you're trained that well and you repeat the things, the training over and over and over. You just go through the motions. So when it happens, you might think about it after those missiles are left, but I don't think there's much thinking while you're doing it. So I'm hoping we don't get into that problem.
It was a strange time for me. I was actually on shore duty at the time, but I was teaching Poseidon fire control. So I was teaching Poseidon fire control to kids who very well might have been going to sea, within that time frame. But I was also part of the Dam Neck Auxiliary Security Force. So in 1991, we look at it now and we go, well, that was crazy. Who would think that way? But in 1991, there was a firm belief, much discussed at the time, that the Iraqis would try to land small parties on the beaches of the East Coast and commit acts of sabotage and terrorism. And so the Auxiliary Security Force at Dam Neck was heavily involved in training with SEAL teams and everything else with penetration exercises, and then guarding the base after that, because there was a firm belief that the Iraqis would try that. Now, again, we look at it now and we go, that was insane. They couldn't have possibly have even done that. But at the time, we didn't know that. And so that was my Gulf War, was the coldest freaking January in Virginia history. It was freaking cold. And
I know it can get cold there in January. Oh, yeah.
I'm out there in the middle of a dismal swamp with a shotgun and a 45. Guarding the base from Domino's delivery trucks, one of which I may or may not have robbed at gunpoint. Maybe. Depends on how you look at it, I guess.
Maybe.
Neither confirmed nor deny.
That'd be an interesting pizza delivery.
Well, we've been out there for like 24 hours and they hadn't fed us.
You got to eat something, right?
Domino's truck kept driving by, and so I stopped him and said, "What do you got?" He said, "Well, I've got this and this and this." I said, "I'll take them." And he said, "You got to call in an order, folks. This is '91. There's no internet, no cell phones, none of that stuff." So I just patted the 45 and said, "No, I'll just take those."
I'm sure you're absolved. I absolved you of any possible litigation that might come against you from Domino's. You're good to go.
Lieutenant came by about an hour later. Said, "You guys see a Domino's truck get robbed down here?" "No, sir." Like a slice of pizza?
Don't know what you're talking about. No Iraqis either, sir.
That's my war story from the Gulf War. I robbed a Domino's truck, possibly at gunpoint.
So people wonder why we were manned at our nuclear weapon systems during that war. The problem was, and I think Israel still states to this day, they can either confirm or deny they have nuclear weapons capability at all. But they were pretty stern at the chemical weapons. Scud missiles coming with chemical weapons, things were going to light off. And the problem back then is, once one person released it and the other trigger point, it's probably still is today. People don't even think about that, but India and Pakistan is the other. But once a couple countries start lighting those things off, you got auto triggers and procedures just start going into place. And unfortunately, it's bad. So
since the time of Kennedy, our national policy has been the response to any kind of weapon of mass destruction, chemical, biological, Yeah, our response is nuclear. Sorry, nuclear. So
nuclear.
So that's always been our response. Now I'll tell you what was weird to me, and I got to be careful how I say this. I was teaching Poseidon, so we were constantly in contact with detailers and folks that were involved with all that stuff. And remember that the Poseidon boats were still around then. They were still.
I was on a Poseidon boat
right.
for that
whole thing. But Poseidon, the C-3 missile, as I understood things, and it's possible that I misunderstood them, but as I understand them, Poseidon had been removed from the PSYOP at that point, and so was essentially considered a tactical system at that point. Read into that what you will, if it's even true. I mean, I was a first class fire controlman teaching Poseidon fire control. It wasn't like the Navy was calling me up and going, "Hey, Dave, what do you think we ought to do here?" Mm-hmm. So
they wasn't telling me nothing. They were just telling me to, wax the decks and get ready to push buttons.
Yeah, because we can't go to war if the decks aren't waxed. Speaking of clean new submarines, remember a couple of episodes ago we talked about the USS Colorado and the stuff that they were selling.
Oh yeah.
I got mine.
Oh yeah, there it is.
I got my beanie cap, which is pretty cool. I love beanie caps, especially beanies that have this on here, which is very French, by the way. Speaking of the French, this is the pom pom. It's very French. Keeps you from bumping your head on the upper level of the gun deck. And then I got this.
Wow. All around. I admire your commitment to the submarine force, Dave. That's very nice.
Well, I'm not going to buy them from every ship, but there's a couple of boats that I have strong connections to. South Dakota, I did. Colorado, obviously, I grew up in Colorado. When Oklahoma has hers and when Utah has hers, then I'll buy those too, because Oklahoma's my native home.
Right.
Utah is where I kind of grew up. So
yeah. I got the Colorado plates, but that's about all I got going on. So
this is really cool. And one of the things I like they were doing is they were taking donations for the single guys. I guess the family resource group or whatever it is takes care of the single guys. And so they were taking. So I sent in what they call it, making up for atonement for my actions during the first Gulf War. I sent a Domino's delivery card to the single guy.
That's pretty good. So, of interest, I know. Hopefully, you've gotten a chance to send it, but I sent you that weird Twitter feed from an interview at the Pentagon, and I'm not sure what day that might, because I've been in trouble with the whole foot here, and I'm not allowed to wear any of my braces, so I kind of been having up not on the internet too much. But I just saw that this morning, and I'm like, what is going on? So.
More than 100 warships. Does the Pentagon have any indications that perhaps a submarine may be trying to defect?
Yes.
We do not, Jeff.
No, they don't. They don't have any indications. And even if they did, would they admit it? All right, this has to be a joke. This is an actual conference at the Pentagon. This has to be a joke, right?
Did you hear the way he asked him? And then you got to see the guy's face. He's just sitting there like, "You're kidding me, right?"
Is it that far-fetched, though?
Well, since you're a firm historian, kind of like the Jack Ryan analyst of the Hunt for October, I have nominated you to be sent out by the Navy to go take care of this problem for us. You got to go find the Red October. The Red October, it's defected.
We don't know that.
From Russia. That's what the reporter asked. He had to have gotten that from somewhere, right? Maybe. It's the Pentagon.
So in the middle of all this the world is about to go to war thing, this guy asks that question. It's got to be a joke. It can't not be a joke. It's got to.
So I think so. If it was a joke, I mean, it's okay if we're joking because, we're podcasters. And to some extent, it's not even okay to joke about some topics. But seeing how, like you just said, the world could end, why would somebody ask that at a Pentagon, interview or broadcast. That's insane.
As a former chat show host myself, I can tell you, asking strange questions is sometimes very fun, just to get reactions out of people to see what he's saying. And sometimes it can kind of break the tension a little bit. And I don't know if this guy got a follow-up question or not, but it's an intriguing question because this idea of we asked the question last time we were together about we know we have Russians on the page, the Subvet Facebook group, which you can find at facebook.com/group/the-subvet. And we asked, what do you guys think? And we got, as far as I can tell, we got zero response, which makes me wonder if A, they're seeing it. Is it being, suppressed over there? B, if they are seeing it, are they just not talking about it?
Right.
Because they don't want us to know, or something else. And so maybe we don't know. This is what I'm saying. We don't know what the average, what's the word from the movie? Son, the average Ruskie don't take a dump without a plan. We don't know what they're thinking. We don't know what we don't know what's going on. And you would think in today's world, we'd know more about that. Wouldn't we?
Yeah, you would think. And the other thing, so I normally get a lot of pictures off of Twitter, ships leaving ports and stuff. Of course, last week, they had surface ships and submarines leaving both coasts like gangbusters.
Right.
Somebody said over 40.
But it's also January.
Yeah. So I don't know. What's that mean for January? What's that mean?
All these ships have been laid up since mid-December for holidays and stuff like that. So January is not an unusual time for a lot of ships to be going to get underway, to do training, that kind of stuff. And I have rumors that some of those deployments were changed late yesterday. I'm not going to tell you where I know this from, but you can probably guess. But at the same time, normal operations were happening. This coming and going in January is not. We're 4 months into the fiscal year. Ships still have money.
Right.
So this is when they go train, they go do those things. They're getting ready for longer deployments. But then all of a sudden yesterday, that seemed to have changed. I know that deployments that were supposed to happen, moves that were supposed to happen yesterday did not happen. And all hands meetings were held. And
that kind of stuff.
Things are getting ominous. So.
And on the Twitter feeds, like I said, I normally get a lot of boats, leaving and coming into ports, and those are kind of gone dark. And I actually think that's good. And if this lights off, if we get into trouble, the Subvet's probably going to go dark. Because we've expanded way out, like you said, beyond just the U.S. submariners. We got all kinds of people on there from all kinds of different countries. So if we're going to war and we still got internet, we got to be careful. We got to do OPSEC. We got to do our part.
Which would be a return to the good old days of the Cold War. I cannot tell you how many people I've had in the last week who have said to me, I really miss the 80s. I really miss the Cold War. I really miss when things made sense. Things now don't make sense.
And we used to say it didn't make sense, but it makes perfect sense compared to this.
Compared to today. So we did have a texter.
Okay.
Who wanted us to talk about a specific submarine subject. And it's an unusual subject, although it's an interesting subject. Dave says the text, do you know anything about this? And then it's a link to Project Azorian. So my initial response to this was, of course not. I don't know anything about it. Nobody knows anything about it. But that's not quite true.
True.
But this was a great example of secrecy during the Cold War, is that this entire project, which was mislabeled Project Jennifer. Project Jennifer was actually...
Yes, that's what I was getting ready to say. It's Project Jennifer, exactly.
Well, Project Jennifer is a subcomponent of Project Azorian, or vice versa. Project Jennifer is a security program, security and disinformation program, whereas Project Azorian is the actual, let's go snag a Soviet SSB off the bottom of the Pacific Ocean.
It was a diesel.
Was a diesel. It was a Gulf II diesel class submarine, K-129. And so I guess now we've pretty much acknowledged that we did this.
Sunk on March 8th, 1968.
Which,
a year and 2 days before my birthday.
Really?
God, yeah.
Shit, yeah.
March 10th, 69. Man, I was born on the same day as Chuck Norris and Osama bin Laden. There's a dichotomy for you.
Well, there you go. So just as, and again, most of you submarine guys will have some passing familiarity with this, but for you other folks. So the Gulf II class SSB was a Soviet attempt to keep up with the United States in terms of submarine launched ballistic missiles. And while it sounds weird to say this now, it actually was a pretty successful ballistic missile submarine. Only carried 3, and they only had a range of about 825 miles or so. But they worked, and they were very reliable. And they were because they were diesel electric, they were pretty quiet. And they were this was the thing that people don't talk about, the Gulf class submarine, very reliable. Because it was, at that point, almost 30-year-old technology. It had been tested and fixed and stuff like that. So when this thing went to sea in March of 68, disappeared. February it went to sea. March it disappeared. And the Soviets couldn't find it. Had no clue where it was, no clue. And we, of course, knew immediately where it was.
Because we had another super secret project going on at the same time.
That
already.
We were listening to everything that was going on. So we knew right where it was.
The Sources Net.
Yep. They sent out the Halibut, which by that point was no longer a Regulus submarine. It was now a spy boat. And it had this fish. They called it a fish on a wire that could go out miles from the submarine and take pictures.
Kind of like that.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, and could go really, really deep. And so it went down. And from what I understand, took somewhere on the order of 20,000 photographs, which were then mosaically collected, and they had a complete picture of the boat. They saw everything.
That's a lot of film, Dave. I mean, because that's actual film. They didn't have no digital photography then. Well, at least I don't think they did.
No, they did not. Including, I'm told, again, one of the photographs or several of the photographs mosaically put together showed one of the crewmen lying on the bottom.
Oh.
It dressed in foul weather gear, the kind of thing you would wear if you were on the surface.
On the surface, yeah.
So that was the first clue, hint, what was going on here. Anyway, SOSUS had picked up 2 massive explosions. Boat sank, blah, blah, blah. Anyway.
And how many miles from Hawaii did we have this thing tracked? It was pretty close.
Well, that depends, because the actual position that they've said is 40 degrees north, 180 west, which would be significantly far away from Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
But that said, I have interviewed people who have said that's not where she was. So
read into that what you will.
But they were significantly closer and well within range of the missile that was on board, the missiles that were on board. Now that's where the conspiracy stuff starts. And nobody knows. Nobody really knows what happened because nobody survived. Nobody has any particular insight. None of the people who were in charge of anything back then are still alive, so you can't put them on the stand.
President Nixon was president, right? 68.
He was elected in 68. He didn't become president until 68.
He wasn't the president during this incident?
Not during the incident. Now, during the recovery, he is. But during the incident, which is important to keep in mind here. So, boat sinks. It's on the bottom. The Halibut finds it. They get all these pictures. They have everything they need to know. There's nothing in the submarine itself that has any particular intelligence value at all, because this is essentially a Type 21 U-boat that's been stretched and had 3 missile tubes installed. Now, what may be there, Eric, is the code books and the missiles. and the torpedoes, because Soviet naval doctrine at the time was every submarine carried 2 nuclear-tipped torpedoes.
Right.
So if we could get their nukes, we might have some reverse engineering to find out what their capabilities are, right? Plus their code books would be extraordinarily valuable. So they hit on this idea some years later, like in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, after Nixon becomes president. They hit on this idea of, we should go get that. Now, that's an important thing to think about here, because we had everything we needed. We had all the photographs. We had detailed photographs that will probably never be released, from what I'm told. That's how detailed these photographs were. What possible benefit could there be to recovering the submarine?
I mean, see, this is the first I've heard about I knew the halibut went out there, but I didn't know that we got to the degree of photography capability that we had back then. I mean, that's pretty incredible technology for the 60s.
I've always said, if I ever get elected president, it's the first thing I'm going to do. I want to see the photo. I want to see the file on 129. Lock me in the Oval Office. I'm going through this because I want to see these pictures.
What's wrong with you, Dave? Everybody has asked about Area 51, and you want to see 120? Get me 129.
But go back to what I said about that body that they found. The body is dressed in foul weather gear, indicating that the submarine was on the surface.
Charging batteries.
The Gulf II class submarine has a snorkel, doesn't need to surface to charge batteries. It also is the first Soviet ballistic missile submarine that has underwater launch capabilities.
Oh, I know where you're going to. Okay. Yeah. Keep going.
So why be on the surface? Especially if you're technically in your patrol area, and if rumor holds, as close to Hawaii as you think you are. Okay. Now, again, this is the conspiracy theory. I'm not saying I believe this. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying I've reviewed it. What I'm saying is, these are questions that have to be answered. The Soviets, some years before, had given the Chinese, the communist Chinese, the Gulf I technology. Now, the Gulf I technology stepped down from the Gulf II. It can't launch submerged. It has to be on the surface. The missile has significantly shorter range, meaning you got to be closer to your target than you would have to be in a Gulf II. And, as I understand it, the Gulf I fire control system required you to be on exact coordinates to launch. In other words, you couldn't be at 137 degrees, 14 minutes, 8 seconds. You had to be at 137 and whatever your cross latitude was. You had to be on a plotted point to launch. 4180.
So there lies the problem.
So they're on the surface at a cross point on the surface when the accident happens. So there is a theory that the KGB, led by a guy by the name of Yuri Andropov at the time, put aboard a special Spetsnaz team. Again, I'm not saying I believe this, that took over the boat and tried to make it look like a Gulf I Chinese Gulf submarine launching a rogue attack on Hawaii, specifically Pearl Harbor. And that something that the Chinese did not know, nor did the KGB for some reason know, was that some years before that, President Johnson, concerned about the proliferation of nuclear weapons, had allowed the Soviets access to what we call one-point safe. And that if you did not know about it and you tried to launch a nuclear weapon, one-point safe, the weapon would self-destruct. And because they didn't know about that, they didn't bypass it like they were supposed to. They didn't have the proper sequence of events. And when they tried to launch this missile in a rogue attack, it detonated and sank the ship.
So the video I watched, a Discovery video, didn't say that story. They had it a little bit different. They said they were possibly snorkeling and they didn't know why it sank, but they guessed that it could have been a hydrogen leak, I guess, from the batteries, and it blew the side out, and that's why it sank. But I've heard parts of that story you just said as well, which is interesting.
John Craven once pointed out the fact that battery explosions are often blamed for sinkings. I shouldn't say often, but battery explosions are the result of sinkings, almost never the cause. So yeah, the battery may have exploded on 129, but it was probably because as she was going down, the water got into the battery compartment and blew up. There's no way to really. So
with all that said, guess what? I want to build a ship and I want to go get that thing and find out what the heck was going on.
Oh, okay. Why go get the ship, Eric? Why go get her? We already had all the photographs. We already had all the information. We already knew where she was. Why go get her? To find out what was going on.
Yeah. Because that'll tell the exact story.
So they get out there. They build the Glomar Explorer, which is, but most everybody knows this story. They build the Glomar Explorer. Howard Hughes is involved. They go out. They build
got an oil derrick looking thing on top.
Clementine, the capture vehicle, all this stuff. They go out and they grab it. And the story goes that as they were raising her, the capture vehicle broke and they lost 2/3 of it. And they only got the forward section of the boat from the sail forward. Okay. That's the official acknowledged story. And that the inside were 2 nuclear tip torpedoes and 6 bodies of Soviet sailors, which, by the way, we, the United States, videoed a burial at sea for and then presented to the Russians in 1992.
Right after the Cold War.
After the Cold War, we gave them the video, and we also recovered the ship's bell, which we presented to them in 92.
I mean, that's a nice touch. I mean,
is it, Eric? Cool. Think about it for just a second. Where is the ship's bell? Where is the ship's bell?
Well, they know that we got the forward section of the boat for sure.
Right, but where is the ship's bell usually located? On a diesel.
It would be in.
Yeah, but we didn't get that part.
In the con?
Yeah, but we didn't get that part.
We didn't get that part. So how do we get the bell? Man, this gets stranger and stranger, Dave. Dang it.
According to John Craven, John Pena Craven, who was heavily involved in SSP and secret stuff and all that kind of stuff, when he read the book, The Hunt for Red October, he basically wet himself. He was stunned. According to his biography, his autobiography, he was absolutely horrified that there was a serious security leak somewhere and that Clancy had access to that leak wherever it was. He was panicked. And then he goes on to tell this hypothetical story, and he makes sure to say, this is hypothetical. Let's assume that the boat did sink. We knew where it was. We went and got it. Why would we want to go get it? To show that we knew what was going on. That the submarine, for whatever reason, whether it was a Spetsnaz team and a KGB PSYOP trying to pretend that it was a communist Chinese submarine and making it obvious that it was communist Chinese attacking Pearl Harbor. So we would go after the Chinese. And remember that in 1968, the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China were viciously involved in an undeclared war. They were shooting at each other across the Amur River. I mean, they were massive battles. They hated each other. The Chinese were trying to get rid of the Russians and so forth and so on. Anyway, so they were trying. Is that what they're trying to do? Did they have a submarine captain go rogue? Remember in Hunt for Red October, there's a mention. He's got a rogue submarine. My God, he's gone rogue. Right. We need to be able to show the Soviets that we know exactly what was going on. They go, they get the boat, whatever portion of it they actually get, okay, is irrelevant. Now, keep in mind at this point in 1968, 1970, 71, 72, 73, 74. This is still all very classified. Nobody knows about it. This isn't like you go down to your bookstore and you pick up a copy of Blind Man's Bluff and you read all about it, or you
right.
whatever. So
get parts of it.
At some point after this, after the recovery, President Nixon flies to Hawaii. This is a matter of record. He awards the crews that are involved with all this their presidential unit citations and whatnot that are highly classified. They never get to read them. They just get the medal. You know, it's like, okay.
Right.
And then
is this the submarine crew and the crew of the
Halibut and Glomar Explorer, whatever else is involved. And then he flies to Hawaii or to Midway for reasons that don't seem to make any sense. And then President Nixon disappears. The President of the United States is not locatable via official record for several days, for a couple of days at least. And when he comes back on the radar, he announces that he's reached détente with the Soviets. And so the speculation is, did he meet with then Leonid Brezhnev and say, look, you need to clamp down on your KGB folks because this is what they tried to do to you.
Right.
And if you want our help, we need to get along better.
Mm-hmm.
And here,
and Brezhnev was always pretty brazen during this time period, always trying to up us, you know.
Oh, by the way, here's the proof. A chunk.
Yeah. Here's the proof you got problems in your KGB. But
now again, I'm not saying I believe any of this. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying that there's a lot of coincidental dots that when you connect them, there's more to this story than we just got out there and raised a Soviet SSB, a diesel ballistic missile submarine from 16,500 feet. Yay, what a technological accomplishment. Then meets the eye at first glance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of my favorite authors is a guy by the name of Kenneth Sewell. Kenneth Sewell wrote several books, but he's also a submariner. Rode the Parche for 5 years. So if you know anything about the Parche, you would know that he would have
a little bit of knowledge. A little bit of knowledge.
Things that aren't normally discussed. Well, he went to work for the State Department and something else afterwards, and he has written 2 books. All Hands Down, which is about the sinking of the Scorpion, and Red Star Rogue, which is about the loss of the K-129 and its recovery. And he has some additional information. I don't want to give away his book because I want you to go buy his book and read it. It's called Red Star Rogue. And I have interviewed Ken. I've sat down and talked to him. I had him on my radio show back in the day. He assures me, again, you can take this for what it's worth. It's secondhand, but he assured me that not only did we get the entire submarine, but that he has personally put his hands on it. He has seen it with his own 2 eyes.
Ooh.
Now, again, I don't know if he's FOS or not. I have no clue. I have no way of knowing. But I can tell you that he's told me.
More parts. This is going to be a historic video right here. Just putting all the pieces together of secondhand stories. I love it.
Ken's book is available still on Amazon. I'll be honest with you. You can probably get it at a secondhand bookstore for half price. That's what I have 3 copies of it. Because
maybe we could try.
Yeah,
we can try to link those books on Amazon as well.
It's a fascinating book, and of course, he's the one that he bases his theory on the idea that he has access to some records that shows that the Spetsnaz team was trying to, and the KGB was trying to usurp some things from Brezhnev, and that they're the ones who came up with the genius plan of simulating being a Chinese Gulf One submarine.
Right.
But again, what you choose to believe is what you choose to believe. It's a fact of history that the K-129 sank and that we recovered some portion of it. And that in 1990s, we gave them the video of the burial at sea of the Soviet sailors and the ship's bell.
Ship's bell, which is
proves
kind of nice.
Yeah.
and we know more about the story than you think we do. That's pretty interesting. So you have a potential rogue element of the KGB, and then you had Brezhnev, who, like I was saying, he was a pretty brazen guy. He was always touting how powerful his military was, and his aeronautical engineering, trying to build better planes and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, fast forward to now, how does that rate to now? You got governments doing brazen things with possible rogue elements of their spy ops. So I don't want to say us, Dave, like CIA or something, and then what's Putin got for his version of the KGB now?
They have
what's the Chinese got? The CCP.
There's a lot of questions. I mean, if in 1968 the KGB was that out of control, again, that's a big underlined, bold, italicized if. The KGB was really that out of control that they could do those kinds of things. Could that happen today? I mean, we have regular discussions on our political shows these days about how out of control certain elements of the federal government here are. The FBI.
Right.
The far beyond where it needs to be going. I read a story this morning about a police department in Alabama that is committing a crime, in my view. They are writing tickets for ridiculous things and fining people for ridiculous things and making millions of dollars off this. Half their city budget comes from these questionable tickets. If you can have a rogue sheriff's department doing that, and remember, it wasn't that long ago, Bell, California, some of you will remember that. If you can have a local government go rogue or a federal agency go rogue, is it beyond the pale to believe that some elements of a Russian government or a Chinese government or a Korean government could go rogue as well? I mean,
or a U.S. government too. I mean, I think it just goes along with when governments get too big with too many moving parts, with powerful weapon systems, and it seems like a lot of these, for us, for example, the FBI, CIA, they all have great capabilities as far as weapons and military capabilities. And then you got the Chinese and Russia, whatever they got as well. When bureaucrats gets too powerful and too big, it's hard as a leader of a country to keep track of all those moving parts.
You think the leaders really do keep track of all
that?
This is not a political show. Do you honestly believe that Joe?
We're not trying to make any accusation. Right. We're just trying to make a comparison to, what happened in 1968.
Do you think Joe Biden really knows what's going on in every element of the government, or any president for that matter?
Or any president? Yeah, we don't have to talk about just Joe Biden and make it political. It's just, you're right, and any president, anytime. Yeah,
and you're back to this whole idea. Well, okay. So what happens if this whole thing in Ukraine is really brought on by rogue Ukrainian separatists who are pushing for this? And in much the same way as Bosnian separatists went into Serbia one year and gunned down the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, who was a nobody. I mean, the crown of Austria-Hungary hated him. The crown of Austria-Hungary was probably okay with the fact that he was now out of the succession. We don't have to worry about him no more. But these Bosnian separatists go over and do this, and eventually it leads to the conflagration of World War I, which destroys the social order that they were trying so desperately to preserve. It's these little things in history, that kick off large events and stuff. It's a little disconcerting. And I'm watching what's happening in Ukraine, and I think back to things like the K-129. And we haven't even scratched the surface of the Scorpion. We haven't even gone there.
We don't even gone there. Yeah, that'd be another hour.
Another hour. You'd need another week on that one. Look, you talk about conspiracy theories. Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
But then you get into other things with this. You get into boats colliding and Operation Ivy Bells and all this kind of stuff. And you realize that there's so many moving parts to this and so much going on.
And USS Connecticut collision, still don't know all the particulars of that. Yeah.
And we may never know. We may never actually know. It's a little, it's weird, and yet at the same time, it's nothing new. It's been going on for a long time, and who knows what's going to happen.
Like the old saying, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
You know,
just by way of wrapping up the Azorian story, the Glomar Explorer still exists, by the way. She's doing deep ocean drilling now. And Ken told me, I have no way of knowing. Ken told me that the K-129 is buried in California. He told me where, but for the life of me, I can't remember at the moment, but it's buried in somewhere in California, never to see the light of day again. Again, I don't know if I believe him or not, but you know, his book is pretty good. It's pretty captivating, and it's worth the read if you're interested in all of this stuff. So, and there's so much more to the story. I mean, there's so many technical things. If you like technical issues, how do you raise a 2,000-ton submarine from 16,000 deeper than the Titanic? Folks,
3 miles down, a huge engineering feat.
Think about how much we've actually raised from the Titanic. I think one 10-ton piece. You know, it's
and that's why I got what kind of capabilities. If we could do that in the 60s, what kind of capabilities do we have now that me and you don't even know about?
Right,
and we don't need to know about, but it's incredible.
Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. Amazing submarine stuff.
Great stories. Great wraparound. Man, we went from World War I to an incredible story that we kind of using submarines in today's show that we have proven again that history repeats itself, and you can learn a lot about what's happened to the past, what could be happening right now.
I don't know if it repeats itself, but it certainly echoes, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it certainly reverberates across history. Well, by Ken's book, I mean, you should read it. You should read any submarine books that we've talked about along the way here. And in the meantime, if you want to get a hold of me and ask me questions about it, dolphindave@slipperyfish.com.
And you can get a hold of me at eric@thesubbed.com. And we're going to be announcing a project for this year. We're going to wait till next show to do that. So stay tuned for next show. As long as the world doesn't blow itself up, we got an exciting project that we'd like to announce. So stay tuned for that.
And if it does blow it up itself in the meantime, I guess we'll be here to cover it, assuming there's still an internet, electricity, and all that stuff. No, I'm serious.
Hopefully no mushroom clouds in the background, or I
don't think anything's going to happen. I don't think anybody's going to nuke anybody, but I definitely think that there's going to be cyber warfare.
And that's already going down. I mean, my internet has been flaky. I've gone to where it should be, 150, 200 meg to nothing, just like that. And it's going back and forth. And I think I can hear it echoing again while we're doing the show. So yeah, the internet warfare is going on right now.
And what happens when they start taking out infrastructures like utilities and water supplies and that kind of stuff? Anyway,
all the probing they did, the banking system, you're exactly right. Anyway, we don't want to scare anybody. Just keep planning your vacations. Think. Get your spring, summer trips lined up. Buy them tickets. Don't worry about what we got to say.
Because again, we're just a couple of guys that we're submarine experts. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, definitely experts.
But when it comes to geopolitical politics,
you probably don't get politics or your financial information from us. It's probably a bad source.
Don't invest in whatever we invest in.
Don't buy Bitcoin right now. It's in the show. Anyway,
I'm Dave Bowman, Dolphin Dave at slipperyfish.com.
And I'm Eric with the Subvet, and we appreciate you listening to the show. And if you like the show, and we're going to upload this to YouTube later, do what you got to do. Subscribe and click the bell and get us some likes and give us some loves. And you can also text and call us. You got that number handy, Dave?
No, I don't.
Hey, we could post it in the comments, but you got to look
at the screen. It's on the screen. It'll be on the screen.
Yeah, we're gonna put it on the screen. But yeah, you can call us at that, and you can tell us what you think there, and leave us a message, and we might play your message or talk about
your text on the next show of the Subvets.
See you next time.